The process of going from Passover to Shavuos is a process, according to the Ramban, called Chol HaMoed, meaning Pesach and Shavuos are connected. We arrive at the constitution of the Jewish people by receiving the Asher Dibros on Har Sinai. When we came to Har Sinai and we received the word of Hashem, we all became prophets, we all became Nevi'im, hearing Hashem's voice. That was the ultimate opportunity to have emunah, to have understanding and certainty. Emunah means certainty that there is a God, that he took us out of Egypt, and he gave us a constitution to live by. 40 days after that great height that we accomplished of being in Dveikus, in marriage to Hashem, the Jewish people were not able to hold on to that emunah, and 3,000 people were involved in the Erev Rav, those who came out of Egypt with the magicians, the Egyptians who came out of Egypt, who converted to Judaism but were not yet weaned from the power of animal worship, built a golden calf, and they worshipped it. They danced around it as a symbol of God. They didn't exactly worship it. They used it as a symbol of power. The shore, the calf, was a symbol of power. And if you look at the Psukim, they didn't worship it, but they danced around it as a symbol. Since Moshe Rabbeinu's power was not there, he was missing by one day, and therefore they use it as a symbol of power of Hashem. But this was a lack in Emunah. This was called a chet. A chet in Judaism, in the Torah, is not translated properly as a sin. The word chet does not mean sin. Chet ha'egel does not mean the sin of the golden calf. Chet ha'evel means the missing of the mark of the golden calf. The word chet is the root word of the word lahachti, which means to shoot an arrow and to miss the mark. That's why teshuva is called to return to the level that you would have been in had you not missed the mark, had you not overshot the target. The translation of chet as being sin is a King James Version translation, which is not our translation. Chet means lachti, to veer off the path. Teshuva means to return to the path, to go back to where we should have been. The Maharal calls chet a lacking. Chet means to lack. We created the lack of a disconnect from Hashem. The lacking of a chet in terms of our relationship with Hashem was a disconnection in our emunah, in our connection, in our certainty of Hashem. We distanced ourselves from Hashem, and therefore we have to return. We have to do teshuva, lashuv, to go back to the right path, to repair that lacking, and to reconnect with Hashem. Therefore, this is an important process in terms of doing tshuva. We know there are 3 dimensions of tshuva. One is charata, I feel remorse, I feel sad that I made this mistake, I made this lacking, I veered off the path, I'm sorry, I have remorse. Vidui, I express, I say I made a mistake, and I enumerate as best as possible what I did wrong. I admit it, I confess it, I speak it. And Kabbalah la'asid, I accept upon myself not to do it again. 3 dimensions of tshuva. If I am faced with the same possibility once again, and I don't make a mistake, says the Rambam, then I achieve teshuva gemura, complete tshuva. I can do teshuva, which means I have remorse. I say vidui, confession, and I accept upon myself not to do it again. Then I have achieved tshuva. I only achieve a teshuva gemura, complete tshuva, if I am faced with the same problem that I failed in before, that I missed the mark on before, and this time I don't fail and I connect with Hashem. That's called teshuva gemura. So not all tshuva is tshuva gemura. Only when I am challenged once again and I don't fail this time, That's called complete Chuba or Teshuva Gemura. So the Meforshim tell us that this idea of hitting our hearts on Yom Kippur or on Slach Lanu Kichatanu during the Midah of morning Shachris Mincha and Mariv, or Ashamnu during a Tanis, or doing Slichos, or Erev Rosh Chodesh, Yom Kippur Katan. Hitting our hearts is not meant to put ourselves down. The idea that we are knocking ourselves down, and people do it so loudly, so forcibly, so strongly, as if it's a self-flagellation, where I'm beating myself down, and you can hear the sounds of people hitting their chests like this. That is not the purpose. That is clearly not the purpose of hitting our hearts. The purpose of hitting our hearts is not to put us down, but to motivate us, to uplift us, to remind us to return, to elevate us, not to put us down. The direction of the hitting of the heart should be up, not down. Up, not down. And therefore, the purpose, say the Meforshim, is to look at this process as activating our Nekudas HaBechira, to animate, to actualize, to motivate, to uplift. You can't uplift anything if you put it down. You can't uplift a child if you criticize and judge and put them down. You cannot uplift a spouse if you put them down and say, you're no good, what's the matter with you, what's wrong with you, why are you doing this? Never, never in world history has anybody caused anybody to be uplifted or to do tshuva, to change, by putting them down. Clearly, the example, the ultimate example of tshuva, of reconnecting with Hashem, must be out of love, not out of anger. Out of love and not out of pain. So to motivate ourselves to get back on track, we do this. I can be a better son. I can speak Lashon Tov, not Lashon Hara. I can be a better daughter. I can be a better husband. I can be a better wife. I could be more careful in halacha. I can be more careful in people's sensitivities and being sensitive. I can do this. The only way to encourage ourselves and others is by positive reinforcement of positive behavior. I can do this. Therefore, tshuva must be seen. And the tshuva for the Cheta Egel, for the missing the mark of the Egel at Mount Sinai, 40 days after getting the Torah, hearing Hashem on Mount Sinai, must be that I want to be a better Eved Hashem. It must be done with joy. Tshuva is a joyous process, not a awful process. So I gently urge my heart, the seat of my choices, the seat of my free will is in my heart and my ruach, my emotions, and I aspire to grow. I want to grow. I push myself. I motivate myself to grow by gently hitting my heart. The raya, the proof of this is, as it says the following in Devarim chapter 7, pasuk 21. Ki Hashem Elokecha bikirbecha lo saros mitnayim. Do not be affrighted from them, for Hashem your God is in the midst of you. Hashem your God is bikirbecha. Hashem is within you. And therefore you want to motivate the godliness within you. You don't want to knock it down. You don't want to destroy it, put it down, hurt it, break it. You want to elevate the godliness within yourself. The only way to motivate a child or a spouse or yourself is positive motivation. Hashem put part of his own godliness into each of us, called a chelek eloka mimal, a dimension of God from above was breathed into us when he created Adam and Eve. And therefore we are the great-great-grandchildren of Adam and Eve. We also have within ourselves that nefesh chaya, that living spirit, that living voice within ourselves. And therefore we have within ourselves Tselem Elokim. Tselem Elokim means godly potential. When God breathed into Adam and Eve a tselem Elokim, it means the potential to act like God. In Bereshit chapter 1, verse 26 and 27, the Torah tells us, Vayomer Elokim na'aseh Adam b'tzalmeinu kidmusenu. Let us make man in our image, which means in our potential and in our form. Tzalmeinu, Selem, the image of God, the potential of God. Kidmusenu, and in our form. Vayirdu b'dgas hayam, and they should rule over the fish, b'of hashamayim, and the fowl, v'hema, v'chol haaretz, and all the animals in the whole land, uv'chol haremes, and all the creeping animals, haromes ha'aretz, the creep upon the land, vayivra, and the next pasuk says, 27 says, vayivra Elokim esa adam b'tzalmo, b'tzelem Elokim bara'oso, zachar nekeva bara'osam. And God created man in his own image, in his potential, and the image of God and the potential of God, God created him. Male and female, he created them. So let's look at this again. In verse 26, Hashem says, let us make man. Let us make man. B'tzalmeinu, in our potential. Kidemus. But when it came to actually creating Adam, the next verse says, Vayivra Elokim esa Adam b'tzalmo, b'tzelem Elokim bara'uso. There's a missing word. The plan to create man was b'tzalmeinu kidmusenu, in our image and in our form. But when it came to actually making man, he made him only b'tzalmeinu. What's missing? What word is missing from the actual creation of man, which was not executed when the plan was to make man in two dimensions of God, Salmenu and Debusenu, image and form. In actual fact, God made man only b'tzalmeinu, in God's image, in his potential. So why didn't God also make man in his form? What does the word demusenu mean? The word demusenu means domelo, like him, similar to him. Therefore, God gave us potential, salmenu, but God said, but when it comes to being like me, domeh, to be like God, when God said, when it comes to actualizing and actually becoming similar to me, similar to God, that is not in God's hands, that's in your hands. Therefore, I'm not going to make you in my form. I'm going to make you in my potential, salmenu, but I'm not going to make you demusenu, in my form. That is up to you. That's up to us. And therefore, God left out the form of God in the creation of man, because he said the form, the similarity to me, that's up to you and your free will. So we have to do the work to transform potential to actual. So we lost the connection to Hashem at 40 days after Mount Sinai, with Shiva Asar Tammuz, the 17th of Tammuz, when Moshe came down and broke the luchos. And breaking the luchos is a symbol of the breaking of the relationship. We will never get back those luchos rishonos, the first luchos. We got the second luchos on Yom Kippur, 120 days later, after Matan Torah, we got the luchos, we got the second luchos on Yom Kippur. But those were luchos shnios. Those were a facsimile, like the first luchos, but not the same level, not the same madrega. A person could able to see Hashem's hand in the luchos rishonos. He could read the whole Torah from the luchos rishonos. The second luchos required effort, required toil, understanding, Mishnah, Gemara, understanding. But a person was able to see the entire Torah by looking at the luchos rishonos. That was a higher level because God's words were in the luchos rishonos. God's words were not in the second luchos, because Moshe Rabbeinu, psal lecha, you have to write the words. In the first luchos, Hashem's hand, his voice, kaviyachol, turned into fire and turned into the engravement. Charus ala luchos, engraved on the luchos. But that engraving of Hashem's voice on the luchos was not in the second luchos. It was only on the first luchos. So we lost that opportunity to be directly connected, direct certainty, direct emunah. So therefore, Moshe Rabbeinu went up the mountain on the 18th of Tammuz, the day afterwards, came down on the 29th day of Av. Hashem said to Moshe Rabbeinu during his second 40 days on the mountain, from the 18th of Tammuz until the 29th of Av, 40 days, God said, I am going to give you the formula for Chuba. God said, I'm going to give you, Moshe Rabbeinu, the formula for Chuba, for return to me, return to certainty, return to the domelo, to be like me. And God said, I want you to go and teach this to the Jewish people. So God said to Moshe Rabbeinu the following, Vayavor Hashem al panav vayikra. Hashem passed in front of Moshe Rabbeinu and he called out, Hashem, Hashem, kel rachum v'chanun, erech apayim, v'rav chesed v'yemes, no tzar chesed la'alafim, no sayavon v'fesha v'chata v'nakei. And Hashem passed by before Moshe and said, God, God, Kale, Lord, merciful and gracious, long-suffering, abundant in goodness and truth, keeping mercy until the 1,000th generation, forgiving mistake and transgression and missing of the mark, and allows resilience to clear the guilty. God gave us the formula to do teshuvah, to return to that opportunity that we lost with the first luchos. And so therefore Moshe went back up on the first day of Elul with the sound of the shofar, and he came down 40 days later on Yom Kippur with the second set of 10 commandments, the second luchos. And those were not as holy as the first luchos, but yet they were the opportunity for man and God to restore their relationship, for man and the Jewish people to restore their connection. And those luchos are the ones that were placed in the Mishkan. So the Shivrei luchos, the broken luchos, and the new luchos, the second set of 10 commandments, were both placed in the Aron Kodesh in the Mishkan. So what is this formula that God said, that we just sang, and that we sing before, and we're going to sing it on Pesach, when we take out the Torah? Hashem, Hashem, kel rachum v'chanun. We're going to sing the 13 attributes of God. God said that if you do tshuva, if you say these 13 attributes, I'll forgive you. And the Gemara says that this is a bris, this is a covenant, this is a contract, that if you say these words, you'll be forgiven. So what is this idea? A magic formula? You wave a magic wand, say 13 words, and all of a sudden you're forgiven? Doesn't sound like a Jewish idea. In Oz Yashir, we say the following: Ze keli ve'anveyu. This is my God, and I will glorify him. The Gemara in Shabbos says the following. Abba Shaul asked the following question in Shabbos 133b. What does to glorify God mean? What do you mean to glorify? Anvehu. The word anvehu comes to the word nave, beautify. How do you glorify? How do you beautify God? Says Abba Shaul. It means to act like him. In Hebrew, have dome lo. There's that word. Dimusenu. The moose of God. That which God said, I'm going to create man. That which God said, I'm going to create man, bitsalmenu ki demusenu, in my potential, in my actual form. whatever that means, God's form, which means God's intellect, God's free will, God's self-actualization through us. Here in the Gemara it says, Aneveyu, how do you glorify God? Heve dome lo. Here is where we can put in our effort to self-actualize, to be like God, dome lo, and to restore the relationship that we broke with the building of the golden calf. How do you become like God, dome lo? Says the Gemara, Mahu rachum af ata heye rachum. As you are merciful, as God is merciful, you too act with mercy. Mahu chanun, as he is gracious and warm and sensitive, af ata heye chanun. You too also must act with graciousness, warmth, and sensitivity. So what is God saying to us? The way to get the Torah, to restore a relationship with God, and to get the second 10 commandments, the second set of 10 commandments, is to change our midos, to act like God, to walk in his ways, to glorify God, to be domelo, to be like him, by acting like God. What does that mean? By using our midos in a proper way, by using our character development in the proper way. So this is the way in which we can, this is the way in which we can resemble God. We were given the potential to act like God when God created Adam and Eve. And we were given the opportunity to actualize that potential by acting like God, but Adam and Eve failed. And then the Jewish people were given that same opportunity at Mount Sinai when Hashem said, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, and made us all Nevi'im, prophets, to hear God's voice. And we're given that opportunity to self-actualize through the keeping of the 10 commandments by trusting God, by having the certainty of Hashem. And again, we lost it. Just like Adam and Eve made their mistake after God created them and said, here is, I'll make you Bitsalmenu Ki-Tissa, and Adam and Eve made their mistake. So too the Jewish people reenacted their creation at Har Sinai by being created in the image of God. Because that's what the Torah says. They were acted like Ki'ish Echad B'Lev Echad. They became one man with one heart. My Rabbi Rav Moshe Shapiro Zatzal says, which man did they become at Har Sinai? At Mount Sinai? Which man did they become? They became Adam. They reunified, they rectified the mistake of Adam, who failed to follow God's will, at Har Sinai by saying Nasa v'nishma. They became Ish Echad B'Lev Echad. They became the Ish. Which Ish? Adam. And even so, 40 days later, they failed to maintain that level of certainty, of connection, of emunah with Hashem, and they acquiesced in the building of the golden calf by the Erev Rav, and therefore we lost that opportunity. How do we get it back? So Hashem said, here's the formula. During those middle 40 days that Moshe Rabbeinu was on Mount Sinai, Hashem said to him, I'm going to give you the formula. Say these 13 attributes, and you will be forgiven. What are they? Hashem, Hashem is the first one. So now let's work on ourselves. Let us work and understand what these mean so that we can self-actualize and change, develop, actualize our midos to be like Hashem. Hashem, Hashem, the first two of the midos, of the 13 midos harachamim, the 13 attributes of mercy that God told us to actualize, to emulate, to be like, and we will be forgiven, are, the Chazal tell us that the repetition of God's name, Hashem, Hashem, means God is saying, I am Hashem before you make a mistake, and I am the same Hashem after you make a mistake. I created the world, says Hashem, with chesed, with kindness, and I maintain you in life even after you make a mistake. Out of his kindness, even if we fail to follow Hashem's will, even though Hashem is consistent in his love for us, and we are not consistent in our love for him, nevertheless, Hashem's consistency means that he will forgive us after we make a mistake. I am Hashem before I make a mistake, and I am Hashem after the Jewish people make a mistake. The question is, how do we apply this in our lives? How do we also become consistent, to be domed, to be like God? Ask ourselves the following question. Am I consistent in my love for my spouse? Love for my children? Is it consistent? Or am I erratic, depending on my mood? If I'm in a good mood, I love my spouse. If I'm happy, things are going well, I'm pleasant to my children. But if I'm in a bad mood, I lose it. Hashem is saying to us, you want to be like God, you want to do teshuva, you want to restore yourself to a relationship with God by acting like God. Be consistent. God is consistent, you be consistent. Therefore, we must persevere in our love for our spouse and our children, even if we are hurt, even if we are having a bad hair day, even if we're having a difficult time. We have to maintain our equanimity, our consciousness, our soul state, and reconnect with our true selves and still maintain consistency, even though things are not going my way. I have to learn how to follow through in my love, even if I don't get immediate love in return. That's God. God gives unconditionally. Our job is to act like Hashem unconditionally, with unconditional love. Even if we don't get love in return, we have to continue to give love. That's Hashem. Kale. Aleph Lamed is Kale. Mighty. This means strength. God is mighty in providing for us. He's mighty in mercy. Am I mighty? Are we mighty? Are we strong in our mercy? Are we strong in our backbone to do the right thing? Do we live Torah values or merely serve them lip service? Am I committed, strong, inner strength to grow in my midos? Do I stand up for what I believe in? So kale is strength, inner strength to keep going. Rachum. Rachum means compassion for the physical needs of other people. That's rachamim. Hashem is compassionate for the widow and the orphan and the poor. He is compassionate to us when we are hurting, allows us to heal physically from our wounds and emotionally. Do I emulate Hashem's compassion by feeling and showing compassion to my family members, friends, neighbors, spouse, community? Do I feel the plight of the less fortunate? Do I feel their pain? That's feeling rachamim for others. If I grow in that area, I'll be acting like Hashem and bringing Hashem's midah of rachamim, of his midah of rachamim into the world through my free choice. That's called Chuba. But that's a joyous thing. To act like God is joyous. To do Chuba is joyous. It's not a downer. It's not a bad thing. It's a beautiful thing to act like Hashem. Chanun. How do you act with Chanun? Chen. Chen means gracious or empathy. God shares our emotional pain. Rachamim means God takes care of our physical pain. Chanun, Chen, means God takes care of our emotional pain. So are we emulating God by being empathic to those who are in emotional pain? Am I gracious and loving? Or do my smiles mask my true feelings? Erech Hapayim means patience. Hashem is patient with us. He waits for us to do tshuva. He waits for us to return to him. If I want to be like God, I must ask myself, if I want to be like God, I must ask myself the question, am I patient with my children, with my spouse, with my parents? When I show patience with those around me, I am choosing to bring God's patience into the world through my free will. That's called bringing God into the world by my actions. Therefore, I act like him. If I act like him, I bring him into the world through my free will. That's the goal. Chuba means to bring God into the world through my actions. I failed to bring God into the world because I disconnected from him. Chuba means to return to my connection with God by bringing him back into the world, by being domelo, by acting like him. The next one is Rav Chesed. loving kindness. God is constantly giving us life, eyesight, ability to function in the world. There are some people who act like God, but constantly doing for others and looking for ways to be of service. One of those ideas is people volunteering for the Shea Aguda of Baltimore, always thinking of other people. People involved in getting rides for people, the ride gemach, getting people from place to place without fee, volunteering their time. Chai Lifeline, helping children who are sick. And there's many, many children in our community, teenagers, who volunteer and help siblings, take siblings out. The Jewish Caring Network, Gvuras Yarden, in our community in Baltimore, helping 150 families who are facing serious illness. And people volunteer by bringing them food, by stocking the Tikva House, which is downtown Baltimore, which houses people for free when they come to take care of their children who are ill at Johns Hopkins University. They stay there for weeks, months, or 3 or 4 months at a time with a hotel-like atmosphere, staffed, stocked, and many people go down Motzei Shabbos and sing with the people, have kumazis with the people. That's Rav Chesed, that's giving. Emes, truth. God's signature is truth. He runs the world with truth and justice. Do I act in accordance with Hashem's truth? How careful am I about following halacha? How careful am I about speaking lashon hara? Am I trying to reverse lashon hara by speaking lashon tov, good speech, positive speech, encouraging speech, motivating speech? This takes effort to be positive and to be proactive in praising and encouraging others. That's speaking with emes, looking for the good, looking for the truth. Notzer chesed means the creator of chesed. God creates and recreates the world every second. He created gravity, photosynthesis, electromagnetic forces, molecules, atoms, and nature. Do I emulate God's creativity by thinking creatively to solve my family's issues and challenges? Do I think same old, or do I think creatively and outside the box? How can I solve this issue? How can I help my family? Do I have innovative ideas for my family, my friends, my community? Do I create projects and stuck-up campaigns? That's creativity, using my creativity. Hashem is the creator, and some of us are creative, and we're using Hashem's power of creativity to be like him. If I use my creativity in service of Hashem, I am bringing God's creativity in the world through my free will. That's being domelo, that's being like God. Nosei avon vafesha v'chata'a, those are three, which I'll consider to be one. Those are 3 of the 13, all lumped into one. 3 different dimensions. I'm not going to go into the 3 different dimensions. Meaning, generally speaking, do I forgive? Hashem forgives us every day. Slach lana v'nuki chatanu. He forgives us in Yom Kippur. Do I forgive others? Or do I hold on to a grudge and resentment? Hashem forgives us Hashem forgives us for hurting him. So I would be emulating God if I forgive others. And lastly, vinake. Vinake means he cleanses when we do teshuva. This is called the attribute of resilience. When a person bounces back after a failing and moves on with his life, having learned a life lesson from the mistake. Am I resilient? Can I bounce back? Sheva yipol tzadik v'kam. A tzaddik falls down 7 times and gets up 7 times. Do I bounce back from setbacks? Do I maintain my emunah and say, I'm going to keep going and move on? We now have to address the question, What is this magical formula that God told Moshe Rabbeinu that we just discussed, these 13 attributes? Do we just say them and all of a sudden we get forgiven? It's just a magic wand, a magic formula? Let's see what the Gemara says. The Gemara in Rosh Hashanah 17a says the following. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, as Hashem passed before Moshe and proclaimed the 13 attributes, Rabbi Yochanan said, were it not written in the text, it would be impossible for us to say such a thing. As the Pasuk tells us that Hashem drew his robe around him like a chazan of a congregation and showed Moshe the order of prayer and said to Moshe, whenever Israel sins, let them perform this service before me and I will forgive them. The Hebrew says, Amar Loi, Hashem said to Moshe Rabbeinu, Kozman she Yisrael chotim, whenever Klal Yisrael lack a direct connection with me, whenever Klal Yisrael veer off the path, hate, they miss the mark. Ya'asu lefanai keseder hazeh. Let them do, ya'asu, let them perform these 13 attributes. It doesn't say you shall say the 13 attributes. It's not a magic formula. It's a process of self-development. You have to act like these 13 attributes. And how do we do that? How do we do that? The Alter of Slobodka tells us that let them perform the service means we must integrate these midos into the fabric of our personalities, and we must become these words. Not just say these words, but become these words. Become these midos. Become these attributes of God. Malachim, angels, don't have free will, and therefore do not have the ability to become godlike. Angels can't be godlike. Only man can become godlike by using his free will, to exercise his free will, and to perform these midos, and to emulate Hashem. This illustrates the trust and confidence that Hashem places in us by demanding that we lizdamos lakona, demanding that we act like him, to emulate and resemble him. The fact that he demands this of us means that he believes in our ability to achieve it. If Hashem believes in us, don't we have the right, or perhaps the obligation, to believe in ourselves, that we can emulate God? Not say these words, but integrate them, work on ourselves, develop these midos. And it's a lifelong process, not a week process, not a 2-week process, not a month process. And the initial process is between Pesach and Shavuos. From Passover to Shavuos, 7 weeks to work on our midos. So how can we apply this to our lives in our personal growth chabura, the inspired Parsha, and apply this to ourselves? Chuba, therefore, teshuva, returning to God, should be a positive and joyous process rather than a painful one. When we hit our hearts and say, I made a mistake, I veered off the path, I disconnected, we are gently urging our hearts to follow our true inner aspirations. Character improvement, midos development, by accessing our inner tselem Elokim, our inner godly potential, by resembling Hashem's attributes, should be done with simcha, with joy. To be like God is the most joyous opportunity that we have. Chuba must be done with simcha, the simcha of Chuba. Each of us has been given a unique life mission, and each of us has unique talents and abilities and strengths to enable us to fulfill that God-given mission. When we tap into the attributes of Hashem, which He infused in us, by identifying one midah of the 13 midas of Hashem, one which is our strongest midah, develop it, be wonderful at that midah. And Rav Volba in Alei Shur tells us each of us has one pristine midah. One midah which is our best midah that we can use to self-actualize, and from there we can expand and branch out to the other 12 midos. If we identify that godly potential, that Tselem Elokim within ourselves, and work on it, and identify that midah tova that is in ourselves, and develop it, and work on it, and express it, and share it with those around us, then we will be transforming not only Tselem, potential, but actualizing, domen. Then we will be Ki-Tissa. We will no longer only be B'Tselmenu, in God's image, but Ki-Tissa, in God's form, to act like God, to be similar to God. And that is the mitzvah of the halachta bidracha, to transform our potential into actual, to self-actualize. This is called self-actualization, by transforming our godly potential into actualization. That's the mitzvah of the halachta bidracha, to walk in Hashem's ways.